Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert.
The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Hello there, and welcome to another fresh episode of your current affairs program on Leadership Television, The Big Issue. My name is Winifred Ugbebo, your host on the program. And of course, I have leadership news analyst with me in the studio, Julius Oddi. Julius, it's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. On today's The Big Issue, we're looking at killing of soldiers on law enforcement and duties and matter arising. On Thursday, March 14, 2024, Nigerians woke up to the dreadful news of the killing of 17 military personnel during a rescue mission in Okuama Community in Ughelli South local government area of Bayelsa State. The troops responding to a crisis between Okuama and Okoloba communities in Delta State were ambushed. A commanding officer, 2 majors, 1 captain, and 12 soldiers sadly lost their lives, with 1 civilian also killed. So in this big issue, we are looking at what should security personnel be victims of the people they are deployed to protect. Have Nigerians learned any lessons from what happened in Oddi, Bayelsa State, Zaki-Biam, Benue State, and Baga, Borno State, as well as other places in the past? These are some of the issues we are looking at today on The Big Issue. Now, back to you. The killing of soldiers is a sore one on everybody's lives right now, because it was just a very, very unfortunate and a sad development. Why did it happen so? What happened? What went wrong? These are questions that we are finding out today on The Big Issue.
Well, thank you for having me, Winifred. I want to say that the killing of soldiers is becoming a rampant incident in Nigeria that is totally unacceptable. Why it happened, I do not know. When soldiers are killed in war and they are involved in war, you could say that is an occupational hazard for them. But when soldiers are killed by the very people they are supposed to protect, that they go out to, put themselves in danger in order to prevent those people from getting further into danger, and they get killed in the process, this cannot be said to be an occupational hazard. This is murder. It is unacceptable. It doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. Why does it continue to happen in our country?
Yes, thank you so much. Now, Julius, I want to find out what went wrong with our policing. We're supposed to have the police, which are supposed to maintain law and order. And of course, in this instance, the police were supposed to be there. How come it's now the military that is maintaining law and order in the country?
If you go back in time, you would see that the level of internal crisis in Nigeria is going beyond the point of policing. Just yesterday, there was a news story carried by leadership where cultists were arrested with improvised explosive devices, assault weapons. Assault weapons is an AK-47, pump action rifles, and sophisticated weapons. What are cultists doing with improvised explosives? So that is the level of violence and criminality in our society today that the police are no longer capable of handling. The police don't go about it. It's only in Nigeria that police carry assault weapons. In other places, they carry sidearms. In the past, they used to just carry batons and tear gas. Now they have to carry assault weapons. And they are supposed to be the closest to the civil populace. So you can imagine the level of violence across the country, banditry and all of that. And then the fact that, again, in Nigeria, we have this tendency to abuse power. People deploying police as personal guards or as messengers or as private guards for others. And then the numbers are not sufficient. When the numbers are not sufficient, you take from the insufficient numbers you have and deploy them to extraneous duties. I mean, the soldiers just have to come in. And when there's a violent crisis of the nature we're having in Delta State, you wouldn't expect the police to go there. The police are more liberal with using firearms. So if the police had gone there, you probably would be hearing a different kind of story. The soldiers are more restrained in using firearms. And probably that may be the reason why they fell victim to people who fell on them and just slaughtered them.
All right. Thank you. Now, from what you said, and of course, what every Nigerian knows, that Nigeria is under police. We don't have police enough to govern or to police a population of over 200 million. Now, do you share in estimated 200 million? Do you share in that belief? And what are you proposing that should be done to, remedy that?
President Muhammadu Buhari had proposed that he would employ, was it 100,000 more policemen to, subvert the number of slightly over 400,000 we already have for a population, an estimated population of 200 million people. If you go around again, Nigeria is under-policed. Because with that number, how many policemen could you have perhaps within a range of, say, 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers to be close to the people? In spite of the fact that we have even, spread out into other policing services, we established a civil defense force. We have other, pseudo-security outfits around and parliamentary outfits. They are still not enough to bring the level of violence, that growing violence in our society under their thumb. And it's the reason why we're having soldiers in manning checkpoints. We're having soldiers, we're not supposed to be seeing soldiers. When I was a child, I didn't see a soldier as frequently as I do today. You had to see a soldier maybe because you live in a garrison town like Kaduna or Lagos, where you have military formations almost everywhere. And then, of course, you see them going out and coming in maybe from work and all of that. Otherwise, in the outskirts, you hardly saw a soldier. But today, they are very everywhere because of the level of violence and because of the insufficient number of policemen.
Thank you so much. Now, many people have also blamed the traditional rulers as well in their domain, that rulers, leaders in these communities over failure of breakdown of law and order and other criminal activities. Now, in this instance, what do you expect the two traditional leaders in these two warring communities to have done? Even the state government also have allowed the situation to degenerate to the situation we found today.
Our people as a country have this emotional attachment to ancestral lands. We have a problem of cultural attachment to land. And it's a very passionate issue that when it breaks out, sometimes nobody wants to listen to a traditional ruler. Remember, the traditional rulers have lost the authority they used to have.
Yes.
Under them, we used to have the native authority police. And today, they are just reduced to figurehead monarchs, without even territory. They are just called chiefs. And then they wear their costumes and move around, but they don't have constituted authority to deploy any force. But again, they are very close to the grassroots, so they can actually mobilize youth and tell them to calm down.
Yes.
But we know that in the age in which we live, you and I live, in this Gen Z period, youth hardly don't listen to calm down. They don't listen to caution. First, they react emotionally, and that this is our land and we're not going to accept. If you go back and read literature, like in the story of Things Fall Apart, Chinua Achebe, you see how a land crisis evolved from the community. The community split parallel down the line. One person is saying, no, it was Arrow of God, not Things Fall Apart, I'm sorry. One person saying, this land does not belong to our community. Please leave it for who owns it. And the other person said, my father told me this land belongs to us. And we're not going to go away from it like cowards. We're going to fight for our land. And that was how war broke out. It's still happening today in very different ways. So state governments are also handicapped because we don't have a situation where we don't have an authorized state policing system. We have a federally, centrally controlled policing system. So state governors will have to also rely on, getting approval to ask the Inspector General of Police to now pass an order to the Commissioner of Police to deploy policemen to an area, anti-riot policemen to an area that is in crisis, in turmoil, all of that before these people may get to the location, the whole community would have been burnt down. So we must look at this dysfunctionality that is causing people to resort to self-help at the shortest possible provocation. Everybody resorts to self-help. It's not going to help us.
All right. Thank you so much, Julius, for your thoughts. Now, on this note, we are going on a break. When we come back, we are going to be talking more on the big issue we have today. Don't go away. Stay tuned.
Be part of our brand. Leadership for God and country.
On law enforcement and duties and matters arising. My name is Winifred Weber. Once again, of course, I have leadership news analyst with me in the studio, Julius Oga. Julius, it's a pleasure once again to have you on the program. Yes, just before we went on break, I was going to ask Julius, what happened? We talked about inadequacy of police forces in the country to police an estimated 200 million Nigerians. Now, we want to find out, because recently the National Assembly has passed state policing. Of course, it has passed second reading. What are your thoughts on state policing? Although we have a situation whereby some few people are actually against state policing, while some are all for it. What are your thoughts on state policing? Is that the best way to go?
I am one of those who is afraid of establishing a state police, given Nigeria's dysfunctional democratic system. Well, I would say that.
But when we are talking about actually a restructured or devolution of power, you have to have a state police.
Yes,
don't you think
so? If we get to that point, we'll have to have it. We'll have no choice but to have state policing structure. But for the time being, you don't imagine a situation whereby you look at what the state governors are doing to the local government system. You look at what they are doing to state employed workers. Then you imagine those state governors running a policing system with policemen armed with assault weapons whose salaries they will not pay. State governors in the majority of states in Nigeria are not implementing minimum wage. And one of the problems we have with police is underfunding. We also have governors not paying regular workers' salaries. We have them suppressing local government system, appropriating local government funds. But that is beside the point. We have also had state governors, funding the police by providing logistics, vehicles, and all of that. So you sometimes you see the contradictions are just too many to reconcile.
But Julius, in this situation whereby we have a crime wave that has divide all odds, don't you think state police?
I was going to come to that point. Okay. We now have Amotekun.
Yes.
We now have even though the Eastern Security Network is still an illegal organization, we have the Baga boys. We have, these are variants of state policing, whether you like it or not. We have Hisba in the north. Yes. These are variants of state policing. And Hisba, the Sharia police, are doing wonderful jobs in helping the government to tame many crimes and even immorality in society. Yes. They are helping a lot to do that. But again, my fear, like I have mentioned earlier, with allowing the current setting that we have, the current kind of democratic setting we have, for governors to be the ones who will appoint a state inspector general of police and begin to deploy the police as personal or private armies to wage their personal wars, a political battle against the opposition, is something I fear so very much. I fear a situation where they have the police and they are not paying them as they should pay them, they are not funding the institution as they should fund it, and these people turn their guns on the people and begin to exploit them. These are these are realities we have to consider very, very carefully before we go into state policing. But in a situation where we're seeing what we are seeing today, I think we must talk about true federalism before we talk about state policing. Yes.
That's a good one. And talking about federalism, many prominent Nigerians have reason to endorse federalism or restructuring, whatever the name is. Do you share in that thought?
Well, restructuring maybe depend on who is talking about it. Some people have their own almost everybody has his own definition of what they understand by restructuring. But
the Nobel laureate winner, Professor Wale Soyinka, said he will call it devolvement of
devolution of
devolution,
power.
of power.
Very well. Yes, there is an over concentration of powers in the hands of the federal government, and there's a point where we should begin to think of, okay, the federal government should let go of some things so that the states can actually begin to think like independent components of a federation. Right now, they are not. They are not thinking so financially. They are not thinking so in economic terms. And that's why most states are dysfunctional. They just wait for federation account allocation in order to pay salaries. A federation is supposed to be a system whereby the state is like a country. It's like a minute country of the bigger country, and a component that can survive on its own. Yes. The current president, Bola Tinubu, proved that when he was governor of Lagos State, when for 3 years the federal government seized the allocations to Lagos State. Tinubu didn't stop paying salaries. He didn't go borrowing, taking loans. He generated internal revenue, and that's the basis on which Lagos has continued to grow as if it was a country. But Lagos is just a part of Nigeria. If other states will follow in that trajectory, we're going to have a functional federation, and then we're going to have a situation where the federal government will feel confident enough to say there are things the state should handle by itself. The states are not handling electoral commissions, for example, very well. Meanwhile, the states are supposed to be the ones who will conduct local government elections. But you know that where you have PDP or where you have APC, the states, local governments are going to be controlled by that party. That's not fair.
Very unfortunate.
That's not supposed
now,
to be.
back to the slain 17 soldiers. How well equipped is our military and even the police? Because given the fact that most of these bandits, these clans, they run around with sophisticated weapons.
It is mostly, I would say, not even how well equipped. We know from the immediate past administration that substantially the soldiers' ammunitions and weaponry has been improved significantly. Now, the amount of arms coming into the hands of non-state actors, like insurgent, like violence, is overwhelming. Every day you look at the news, a cache of arms seized by customs, or seized by immigration, or seized by civil defense, a cache of drugs and all those things that give people that energy, negative energy, to go out and do the kind of unconscionable things that they do. It's just too much. So no matter how you arm the soldiers, if at a given point they have to operate by what you call operational procedures or rules of engagement, they are restricted. The soldier doesn't just point a gun at you and start shooting. He has to get an order. Before a soldier is armed with a gun, he has to go to the armory to sign for a rifle. It's not like the policeman who may take his gun home and come to it. You see him flying Okada and is strapping his rifle by his side. So the soldiers, it's not a question of being well armed. It's a question of people now having the audacity to look at soldiers and decide that they want to kill them. And that's not fair.
It's not fair at all. Now we have, they are there, of course, in Delta State and Bayelsa, because the creek, the soldiers have taken over. Of course, we are also hearing situations of homes being burnt or communities being razed down. How the soldiers said they've already arrested 3 of them, of the culprits. What is the best way to go in all this? The community said it's a reprisal killings, and the soldiers said none of that is happening.
Yes, I want to toe the line of the story of the soldiers, because you and I know that in the information and digital age we live in, if that was happening in Bayelsa, in Delta, the pictures, the videos, the stories will be trending everywhere. So I want to take the side of the soldiers, and I'm taking that on the basis of a news item carried by leadership just yesterday, where someone who posted that video alleging that there were reprisal attacks in Delta State, took down that video. He's taking it down. That the image from that video is what many newspapers use as still pictures for their front pages. That is fake news, and you know the crisis in that. And I will hasten to say this, for goodness sake, that a soldier is the only person who only hears that his child has been born or his wife is in labor. He only hears about it. He only hears that his family or his relation has died, that the funeral has taken place. He's the only one who has to take pass to go home to see his relations. He's the only one who hears about his child's birthday, and he's out there. So just us developing this attitude of killing soldiers as if they were the it's despicable. We shouldn't get to that point. In other places, they are respected for the sacrifices they give to the nation.
Thank you so much, Julius. Now, just before we go, what is the way out of this quagmire?
Nigerians...
Because we are seeing a situation like we started at the beginning, where soldiers now are being deployed for peacekeeping within the territory, which is not supposed to be. So what is the way forward?
The way forward, we must find alternative dispute resolutions. We need the soldiers to go back to the barracks and only come out when they are called out, because the police cannot contain a given situation at any point in time. Otherwise, the level of violence in our society, the vested interests that are flooding our society with arms, side arms and assault weapons, who don't want peace in our communities, will continue to lead to a situation where the soldiers may take the laws into their hands. Remember what happened in Oddi, in Bayelsa State in 1999, and what happened in Zaki-Biam in 2001, and what happened in Baga in Borno State in 2013. If we allow that to happen, if the soldiers were to come out in full force, because the military is the only institution in Nigeria where almost every tribe, not almost every tribe, is represented. They are the real federation we talk about as a federalism. They are the complete unit of professionals that are well trained, well educated, that we have invested in. We should respect them and allow them to do their work. But first and foremost, our political authorities must take care of this situation whereby people are resorting to self-help and our society is being flooded with arms.
Yes.
If we don't stop the flooding of our society with small arms, there is going to be more violence, and there's going to be a situation where soldiers will be killed. It may just be, when is the next incident going to happen? We hope it doesn't happen.
All right, thank you so much, Julius Oga. It's been a pleasure having you in the studio today. Well, viewers, you've heard it all from our leadership news analyst, Julius Oga. My name is Winifred Weber. We'll be talking on the killing of soldiers on law enforcement and duties and matters arising. That's been the big issue on today's program, Wednesday, March 2024. I look forward to seeing you same time, same station. Until then, bye. My name is Winifred Weber.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.